Okay, so in this video we're going to create coordinates and use the coordinates to create markers on the map. So what we're going to do is we're using ChatGPT to generate some code that is going to create some random longitudes and latitudes for us. When we create the longitudes and the latitudes, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get these longitudes and latitudes with JavaScript. So in our database, we create a table. We create a database, we call it tutorial. So we're going to create a table called locations. And then the locations table is what's going to hold all our markers. So we have a clean map. We don't have anything on the map. The next thing we do is we go back to ChatGPT and then let's see what we can get. So we go to the search, we say create an SQL statement to insert. Oh, let's use generate. So it's going to generate a code. So we say generate 50 random longitudes and latitudes, something like that. So latitudes and longitudes, because on the coordinate we have the latitude and we have the longitude. So latitude first and longitude second. So latitude and longitude coordinates in New York City. And create an SQL statement that is going to insert this data into the database. So basically, we just wanted to create a code that is going to help us generate a random data. So insert into a table called locations with columns lat and long. Okay, so let's see what ChatGPT can do. All right. So what it's doing is it's generating the code, I think, in Python. So we don't need it in Python. We need it in MySQL. So let's just copy the prompt. Let's just paste it and let's just say create MySQL. So let's see. We have a network problem, so let's just refresh the page. To create MySQL. Okay, let's see. I think it's still creating it in Python. So we need to find the reason why it's doing that. So let's check if we add PHP to it. Maybe we can get a PHP MySQL. All right, so let's see. Okay, so we have coordinates array, we have for loop, we're generating random longitudes and latitudes. Okay. So now I think we have a good code that we can use to insert data into the database. So we have a latitudes, we have a longitudes, we have a for loop that is creating the coordinates, we have a for each loop that is iterating the array and inserting it into the database one after the other. So that's a good code. That's a good logic from just ChatGPT right now. So we grab the code, we create one folder in our file, we call it control, and then we paste this file, we run it, we insert the data into the database, and boom, we will have our coordinates, we will have our longitudes, and we have our latitudes. So when we insert the data into the database, the next thing we need to do is we need to get this data with JavaScript and PHP. Once we grab the data, we process the data into markers. So the next thing we need to do is let's just insert the data. We go to our control, we change the name of the database connection, tutorial host, localhost. So let's just go back and let's navigate to. So before that, let's create a table called locations. Yeah, we need to do that before we continue. All right, we have our table. So the next thing we need to do is just create the columns for the table. We have the int, which is auto increment. That is the ID. The next thing we need is we just need the latitude. Varchar. Let's just say 200. Let's just say another varchar. Let's just another 200, and that's going to be the longitude. Let's save it. The name long is a MySQL keyword, so we're going to change that later. When you have a keyword in MySQL, it's not going to work really well. So you need to change it to a word or a variable that does not exist in a MySQL keyword. Okay, so let's navigate to the directory. We're going to see some errors. All right, so we have a MySQL connect error. We cannot connect to the database. So let's see. Okay, so the host is supposed to be localhost, right? The host is supposed to be localhost, and the username is supposed to be root. Okay, so localhost root. Great. So let's check it out. Okay, now we have a good connection. The next thing we need to do is we need to check our insert statement. So the insert statement from ChatGPT, the version of the insert statement, we need to check it out. So let's see. Okay, we have a good coordinate insert into locations, lat and long values, long and lat and long. Okay, I think we need to do something with the value section in the insert statement. Okay, so it's not going to work because of the values that we have. Okay, so let's put it in quotes. Let's put them in quotes. And let's run it and see. All right, it's still not working. So we have long. Okay, we have long. As I said, long is a keyword, so it's not going to work. So let's just change it to LNG. All right, LNG. Let's go back to our database, change the long to LNG. We save it and we run our. Great. Now it says here records created successfully. So we have 50 records. So all of them was inserted into the database successfully. So we have our random longitudes and latitudes. So we have our random longitudes and latitudes that we're going to collect with JavaScript and create the markers from. The next thing we need to do is is actually get the markers from the database. Okay, we need to collect the markers from the database, and that's where our JavaScript comes in. So let's close that. Let's open our JavaScript. We have our map. So this is just creating our map and putting us in the center. All right, so this is our map. This code is handling the map. The next thing we want to do is we want to open up axios. So we'll be using axios as our JavaScript API request. So we were going to be using this to connect our JavaScript with our PHP. Now you can also use Ajax and it works the same. But I prefer Axios because Axios is built specifically for that and it has more features. But if you want to use jQuery's Ajax, you're good to go. It's the same process. So you create a request, a get request, a post request, it returns the data, then we use that data. So we copy the template for Axios, get request. So that is get started. When you go to Axios, go to examples, get started. You need to include the Axios CDN. Okay, so we just copy the script of Axios and then we paste it in our index.html. The next thing we need to do is we need to create a PHP file to collect. That is going to have our SQL statements to contact the database and return with the coordinates. So we call that getCoordinates.php. So inside our JavaScript, what the Axios is going to do is it's going to get some information from the getCoordinates.php file. So it's going to contact the getCoordinates.php file. There's going to be an SQL statement inside the getCoordinates, and the SQL statement is going to contact the database, and the database is going to return some results, and the results is going to be given back to Axios, and Axios is going to bring it to the user interface. That's great. So we have our getCoordinates.php. Now let's run the code and let's see whether we have our results. So we just put some random code in get PHP to see whether we have our results. So get coordinates.php. So we need to bring the folder first and then we run it. Great. Great, so I'm here. That's great. We have our information, we have the information that we need. The next thing we're supposed to do is we have to write our code. Okay, so now we have to write our code that's going to select the data from the database. We're going to select the data from the database in the getCoordinates.php file. So we'll go to our getCoordinates.php file and then we'll start connecting to the database and writing some code. Okay. So let's connect to our database. Let's copy our database connection. Let's paste it there. Next thing we need to do is we need to get some insert statements. And when we get the coordinates from the database, what we're going to do is we're just going to wrap the results in a JSON object and return it back to the JavaScript. So the first thing we need is we need a select statement. MySQLi _query connection select distinct. So the distinct means we're only going to select data that is unique data. Okay, so we're not going to double. If there's a value that is double, or if there's a row that is double, we're going to bring only one of them. So select distinct latitude and longitude from locations. So we have a locations table. That's where we're going to get our data. We have our while loop, while MySQL query connection. We put it there. So basically, you need this logic, and if you're working with any other language, all you need to do is just have something to contact your database, return it in an array, and then let's see what's going to happen. So we have our while loop, and inside our while loop, we're going to grab the longitude and the latitude, and we're going to push it into an array. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an array. We're going to call it Marcus. We're going to initialize it as empty array for now. So once we get each array, once we get to each array, the next thing we need to do is get each record. So each coordinate is equal to array. So we create an array object inside the while loop. This is called an associative array because we're going to have a key and a value. So we call the first key lat. The next thing we need to do is we need to get the data for that. So lat is equal to $$row lat. So that lat means that's our latitude. We're going to do the same thing for the second one, and we're going to name that the longitude. So we store it with the arrow. And then when we have this, the next thing we need to do is now we have the data in an array object. We need to push that array object into our marker object. Okay, we already have a marker and it's empty. The next thing we need to do is to push that array into the Marcus. So we say array push. The first is the marker. The second is the record that we are pushing into the marker. And then when everything is done, we just need to echo our JSON object. We need to encode it. So JSON encode, and then we put our data into it. Now back to our JavaScript. So what the echo is doing is going to spit out the data that we just grabbed from the database and give it to the axios. And the axios will bring it back from the get coordinates.php to the map.js. So the map.js is going to hold the data. So if we want to grab the data, we say data is equal to response.data because it's going to store everything that was returned in the data object in the response that comes back. So that is our coordinates. So we have all those coordinates. So you see, we just console logged our coordinates and everything is there. So we're going to convert that coordinate into actual markers on the map, and it's really great. It's really great. Now that we have our coordinates, the next thing we need to do is to create some arrays like we created in the PHP. We need to create some arrays. So we will have to create two arrays. The first array is going to handle the first processing of the JSON object that we bring. The next array is what is going to store the markers as they have the arrays, the objects in the arrays have been processed. So we'll look at both processing stages and we're going to know how they're going to work. So the first one we say array markers. So the array markers is going to be what we're going to return from the database. We process it, we grab each longitude, latitude, we create some content for it, we give it some ID, we give it some field data, we push it into the second array. When we push it into the second array is going to store the markers itself. So the second array is what is going to be used to generate. So the first array we say array markers, the second array is all markers. Okay, good. You can name this however you want, but make sure you're consistent and you remember them. The next thing we need to do is we're going to take out our console.log. We're going to start processing the data that we just got from the database. Okay. So next thing we say push all results. I just say push all coordinates. Coordinates is great. Coordinates from database to the markers or to array markers. Okay. So what we're doing is we're pushing all coordinates that we just got from the database to the array markers. The array markers has been initialized. It's on top. We use the let because we're going to be changing it. We're going to be pushing data into it. So we just use let instead of using const. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to say array.push. Okay, array.push. So the first thing we do is we push all the results that we got from the database. We just push it into the first one called array markers. Okay. Then we're going to use JavaScript to break that array into pieces and take each coordinate, add some content, some titles, some stuff to it, and then push it again into all markers. All right, we push it into all markers. The first thing we need to do is we need to just push everything we got from the database into the array markers and use the for loop to iterate all the data we just pushed into the array markers. And then when we get each data, we add a content, we add some titles, we add any ID, anything you want to add to it, you just add it to it. You can add your custom content, your custom data. We add everything to that marker. We push it into the all markers. So when we push it into the all markers, it's not a marker yet. And then we're going to iterate it again. And then in that state is where we initialize the Google Map API markers. So we initialize the Google Map markers on each of the array, on each of the objects or each of the elements in the array, and then they turn into real markers and they go into the map. They go on the map. So let's get right into it. Okay, so let's move right in. The next thing we're going to do is we're just going to iterate through the data that we just pushed and add some more content to it. So let's get into that. The next thing we say loop through the coordinates. We're going to loop through the coordinates. We're just going to use a for loop, a normal simple loop. And then with each for loop, so we're just going to say, let's just give it a name. Let's just say I, and the array is going to be array markers, because that is the array that we're going to be iterating through. That's what we're going to be looping through. So we just say array markers dot length. So for loop, you know how for loops are. So we're just going to go forward. So we store each element that we get from the for loop in the element variable. So we have the constant variable, we call it element. So in each element is going to be another array, because you need to know that in the array markers, each data inside is also an array of latitude and longitude. Okay, it's an array of latitudes and longitude, because when we look at our PHP, we have the while loop, which is going to iterate through every while loop, and inside every while loop there is an array that is storing data. So the array markers it's an array, it has a lot of data, and each data is also another array. So we're just going to use another for loop to iterate through those arrays to get our information. So we're going to use another for loop. We use for loops because you can add as many data as you want inside the PHP part without having to change anything in the JavaScript. We could easily just put some data. We grab it using those brackets with the I, so we can just say 0, 1, just get them with their indexes. But we want to use another for loop so that when we add more data to our database, or when we add more information in the PHP file, we're just going to get them directly from here. So we use our for loops. Now, the element that we're going to be looping through is going to be the data. So it's not going to be each data. We just rename it from elements to each data. So we have each data.length. So each data.length is going to hold the array that was inside the original array. So each data. So now in each data, we're going to grab the latitude. So grabbing the latitude, we need to convert the latitude from integer to float because the latitude has so many decimals. So we see a parse float each data, and then the first index that we are grabbing the each. So because we are working with each inside the for loop, and then the next data we're grabbing is lat. Because we're not using indexed array, we need to call it with its name. It's its real name. That's what we call this associative array. So we change it to longitude. We just copy and paste it. We make it longitude. And make sure you change the lat in the longitude. You change it into LNG. Make sure you change it to LNG. There was a little mistake, so we're going to fix it later, all right? But make sure you change it to LNG. You see we have both lat and lat with both variables, but that's not supposed to be. You're just supposed to change everything back. And now once we get each data, we need to push it into the all mark, all right? All mark array. So we push it into the all mark array. Now the first data we are pushing is the latitude and longitude. So the all mark dot push. Now we are pushing the lat and the longitude that we just grabbed from each array. Okay, great. So lat is latitude and long is longitude. LLT and LNT. Now this is where we get to add more data to what we're doing. Okay, this is where we add more and more of data. So we just add content. So we just say this is a brief content. You can add a title, you can add an ID, you can add an image, you can add any data that you just want to add to this this object. So once we grab this, we're going to create markers with these data. No matter the number of data, the most important things that you need is a longitude and a latitude. That is all Google Maps want. When you have the longitude and the latitude, that's what Google Maps want. When you're done with that, you can add as many data as you want, and you can use that data for further processing, which we're going to cover in the videos to come. The next thing is we grab the title, and we just say this is a hello title. So this is a brief content for our content and hello title. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to iterate through the all mark to generate the markers itself. All right, this is when we're going to generate the markers itself. So we say create markers on map. All right, create markers on map. So we're going to end the video here. In the next section, we're going to process it, and we're going to iterate through the all mark JSON. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like the video, and get back in the next video for the end of this episode, we're going to create the markers and we're just going to put them on the maps. So subscribe and like the video and share to your friends.